إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So we are right at the end of this treatise, and we're on the final sentences. In the previous lesson we looked at the statement of Imam al-Tahawi rahimahullah, in which he explains the balance and the moderation of Islam in between extremism and exaggeration and neglect, and in between the innovation of tashbih, which is to resemble Allah to His creation, and ta'til, which is to deny the attributes of Allah, and likewise in between al-jabr, which is to claim that man is forced and compelled in his actions, and al-qadar, which is to claim that man is the independent creator of his actions. And likewise in between al-aman, which is to feel safe and secure from the plots and the plan of Allah Azza wa Jal, and al-ya'as, which is to despair of the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal. So Islam is in between all of these. And Islam is only one Islam. It is the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. There is no such thing as the divinely revealed heavenly religions, because there is only one divinely revealed religion, and it is Islam. And as for what is besides that, then it is a deen mubaddal, a muharraf, which is a deen which has been altered and been changed. So after that, At-Tahawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, فَهَذَا دِينُنَا وَاعْتِقَادُنَا ظَاهِرًا وَبَاطِنًا وَنَحْنُ بُرَآءُ إِلَى اللَّهِ مِنْ كُلِّ مَنْ خَالَفَ الَّذِي ذَكَرْنَاهُ وَبَيَّنَّاهُ. So he says, this is our deen, openly, ظاهرًا, outwardly, and inwardly. And we are free, we exonerate ourselves to Allah, from Allah, we exonerate ourselves from all of that to Allah, from everything, min kulli man khalafa alladhi dhakarnahu wa bayyanahu, from everything, or from everyone who opposes that which we have mentioned and explained. So with respect to this statement, then Al-Tahawi means that everything which he has mentioned in this risala, in this treatise, in this aqeedah, from its beginning to its end, that this is our deen, zahiran wa batinan, with the meaning that we don't conceal anything that we believe, that we don't have any hypocrisy with respect to that which we hold as our religion, and meaning that such that we hide one thing and we convey another thing. So we make something apparent from our religion and then we hide something else. And this is not the way of the people of the Sunnah and the Jama'ah, and it's not the way of the people of the truth. And this, you see, is the way of the people of falsehood, like the Rafidah, Batiniyah, those who use dissimulation, meaning that they show one thing and hide another thing. Likewise, you see like the Nation of Islam, which are also Batiniyah, and you know they hold doctrines and then conceal them and cover them with interpretations of the Quran, interpolations of the Quran, and they present something for the most part other than what they believe. And they have nifaq, they have hypocrisy towards the people of Islam, in that they pretend to be from amongst them when they are not from amongst them. So our deen, our aqeedah, our belief ظاهرا وباطنا, it is all open and clear and manifest. And the origin with respect to every person is that he announces his belief. So we do not conceal and hide that which we believe, we openly announce it. And then that's the asl, that's the foundation. And then there are situations in which it is permissible, where the maslaha allows you, where the benefit allows you. For example, during a time of tribulation, fitna, in which a person is put to trial and he's not able to bear the trial. He's not able to bear that trial, the harms of that particular trial. So in that case, he may present something, he may not present his actual belief, what he believes. And so apart from those unique situations, the asl, the foundation is that a person always manifests what he believes. There is no nifaq, there's no hypocrisy, there's no concealment, there's no dissimulation. Our deen is open and clear and apparent. So, therefore, At-Tahawi, in this text, he frees himself from anyone who opposes and everyone who opposes the way and the path of the people of Hadith and Sunnah and Jama'ah. وَنَحْنُ بَرَاءُ إِلَى اللَّهِ مِنْ كُلِّ مَنْ خَالَفَ الَّذِي ذَكَرْنَاهُ وَبَيَّنَّاهُ. We are free. وَنَحْنُ بَرَاءُ إِلَى اللَّهِ مِنْ كُلِّ مَنْ خَالَفَ الَّذِي ذَكَرْنَاهُ وَبَيَّنَّاهُ. So we are free. We absolve ourselves in front of Allah from everyone who opposes that which we have mentioned and have explained. So, now the Shaykh mentions a point here in his commentary, Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh, and he says, obviously in the treatise itself, in this treatise, there are a number of things in which the author has opposed the way of the Salaf. And in particular, the issue of al-Eemaan, faith, because he went to the view of Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, who says that, and the Hanafis, who said that Eemaan is belief and statement, qawlun wa i'tiqadun, and they did not include actions from faith. So, however, aside from these things, everything else that the author in general has mentioned, then it is correct and true. And so our position towards this is that we say anyone who opposes the way of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah without referring to any one specific individual. And this is because when we look at individual scholars, even amongst the Salaf, we see that they might have an ijtihad. They might have spoke in a specific issue, and they might have made their ijtihad in that issue, and perhaps they might have erred and not been correct in that issue, even though there are few. It's not something that's common, but it's something that's with every scholar there might be one or two things, and for that reason, when we speak about that which we hold on to, we say that which the Salaf were upon, that which opposes the book and the Sunnah and Ijma'. This is how we speak, and we don't tie it to a specific individual. And that's because we see, for example, that some of the scholars, by way of example, Ibn Khuzaymah, rahimahullah, a great and mighty scholar, he wrote a book called Kitab al-Tawheed, a mighty book on the attributes. And within that book, he held a particular view with respect to the attribute of surah for Allah. And he opposed that which the rest of the Salaf were upon. And likewise, Imam al-Barbahari, rahimahullah, has a few masail in which he includes them to be from within the creed when they're not from the creed. And, he perhaps relied upon some narrations. And these are like small amount of affairs in the book. So the point being that individual scholars can make ijtihadat. They can, speak in a matter and they might err in that matter, or they might not have any clear, apparent proof in that matter. So what we are saying is it's not a condition that a person has to be free from mistakes, right? In order to be from the people of the Sunnah and the Jama'ah, because as we said, the people of ijtihad, they might make ijtihad in an issue. They don't knowingly oppose the truth once it has been made clear. And for that reason, that's why the scholars, when they speak of the scholars like Ibn al-Qayyim and Ibn Taymiyyah, they looked back at what was in the books of the Salaf and they brought together that which the Salaf were agreed upon, and they left those things which, from the ijtihadat of the scholars. And so they spoke on the basis of that which the Salaf were agreed upon. And for that reason, that's why we have a great dependence upon the books of Ibn al-Qayyim and Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, because we find that they are free from those types of earlier ijtihads that you might have found from some of the scholars like At-Tahawi, for example, like Ibn Khuzaymah, for example, in that issue of the surah, and things like that. And so that's why these scholars were given tawfiq, and on the whole their books are free from those kind of isolated ijtihadat, because they took that which the Salaf were agreed upon. So that is that particular point. And then we come to the final statement of At-Tahawi, and he says, وَنَسْأَلَ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى أَن يُثَبِّتَنَا عَلَى الْإِيمَانِ وَيَخْتِمَ لَنَا بِهِ وَيَعْصِمَنَا مِنَ الْأَحْوَاءِ الْمُخْتَلِفَةِ وَالْآرَاءِ الْمُتَفَرِّقَةِ وَالْمَذَاهِبِ الرَّدِيَّةِ. So we ask Allah the Most High to give us firmness upon Eemaan, and to seal for us, to seal our lives upon it, and to protect us from the desires, the various desires, and the separated opinions, the separating opinions, and also the madahib al-radiyah, which are those lowly madahib, the positions and views that people take which are lowly. Like, for example, the mushabbiha, those who liken Allah to His creation, like the mu'tazila, like the jahmiya, like the Jabariya and the Qadariya and others. From those people, من الذين خالفوا السنة والجماعة, from those people who opposed the Sunnah and the Jama'ah, and they allied with misguidance. وحالفوا الضلالة, they instead allied with misguidance. So we, وَنَحْنُ مِنْهُمْ بَرَاءٌ, we are free from them. وَهُمْ عِنْدَنَا دُلَّالٌ, and they with us are misguided. وَأَرْدِيَاءُ, and they are lowly. وَبِاللَّهِ الْعِصْمَةُ وَالتَّوْفِيقُ, and with Allah lies protection and success. So, in these closing statements, inshallah ta'ala, we'll take from, first of all, what Sheikh Salih Al-Fawzan has said. And so he says regarding this, when you look at people, what has led them to go astray? It is only their desires which have led them astray. Al-ahwa. Why does a person go astray? It is because of a hawa, a desire which is with that person. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, وَمَنْ أَضَلُّ مِمَّنِ اتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ بِغَيْرِ هُدًى مِنَ اللَّهِ. Who is more astray than the one who follows his desire without guidance from Allah? Who is more astray than the one who follows his desires without guidance from Allah? Surah Al-Qasas 28 verse 50. And likewise he also said, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ وَأَضَلَّهُ اللَّهُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ. Have you seen the one who takes as his deity his own desire, and Allah has misguided him upon knowledge? And so a person therefore asks Allah to protect him from hawa and to guide him from the truth, and that he opposes his own desire, even if the truth opposes his own desire. And Allah Azza wa Jal, He said regarding the Yahud, أَفَكُلَّمَا جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ بِمَا لَا تَحْوَى أَنفُسُكُمْ إِسْتَكْبَرْتُمْ فَفَرِيقًا كَذَّبْتُمْ وَفَرِيقًا تَقْتُلُونَ. That every time we send a messenger comes to you with what you do not like, with what you do not desire, your souls do not desire, you show arrogance. And a party of them you belie, you reject them, and a party of them you kill. Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah number 2, verse number 87. This is the way of the Yahud, who when the messenger came with what they didn't like, didn't agree with their souls, then they either rejected the messenger or they killed the messenger in some instances. And so, as for these firaq, these groups or these parties mentioned here by At-Tahawi, rahimahullah, then Shaykh Al-Fawzan says that these are the sects which were mentioned by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Soon shall this nation split into 73 sects, All of them are in the hellfire. To the end of the hadith. And this is because these sects, they depart from the truth, and those who remain upon that which the companions of the Messenger of Allah were upon, then they are the ones who are saved from the fire. And for that reason they are called Al-Firqatun Najiyah, the saved group. And as for the groups which he mentioned, Al-Mushabbiha, Al-Mu'tazila, Al-Jahmiyyah, then the Shaykh mentions briefly each of those. As for the Mushabbiha, then they are the ones who resemble the attributes of Allah with those of His creation. And we discussed that previously, the Mushabbiha. And as for the Mu'tazila, then the Mu'tazila, they are the ones who negated the attributes of Allah because they claimed that this would make Allah composed. If He has multiple attributes, it means that He would be composed. And these multiple attributes have to be eternal with Him. And so therefore there are multiple deities which are eternal, all of which is false. And they are the followers of Wasil bin Ata, an individual by the name of Wasil bin Ata, and Amr bin Ubaid. And these were initially students of Al-Hasan al-Basri, rahimahullah. Used to come to his circles and gatherings, and on one occasion Al-Hasan al-Basri was asked about the person of major sin. What happens to the person of major sin? And so Al-Hasan al-Basri, he answered in accordance with the Quran and the Sunnah, and he said that a person of sin is that he is under the will of Allah, and he is one who is deficient in Eemaan. He's naqisul Eemaan. He doesn't become a disbeliever. He's simply deficient in his faith, and if Allah wills, He'll punish him, and if Allah wills, He will forgive him. And this is clearly what is in the Quran and the Sunnah. So these two men, they differed with Al-Hasan al-Basri, who's their teacher, and they spoke on the basis of opinion, their ra'i. And they said, as for us, we say that he is in a position between two positions. We say he's neither a disbeliever, nor we say that he is a believer. Rather, he's in a position between two positions. And then, so he's not a kafir, no, he's a Muslim. We don't describe him with either. We don't say he's either. So then they invented this new madhab around this statement, and then they began to call to it. And then they separated and split from the gatherings of Al-Hasan al-Basri. And hence their name, the name Mu'tazila, from i'tizal, which means separation and isolation. And so these are the Mu'tazila. And likewise the Jabariyya wal-Jabariyya that he mentioned, the Jabariyya, they are the followers of Al-Jahm bin Safwan. Al-Jahm bin Safwan, he is the originator of this statement. And in general, these people, they took their statements from sources outside of Islam. One of those sources was from Talut, who is a Yahudi, and he himself took from Labid bin al-A'sam, and he himself is a Yahudi. He's the one who did magic upon the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so they took some of these statements, for example, the statement of the creation of the Quran, and things like that from those people. And from their statements that these men invented, Al-Ja'd bin Dirham, Al-Jahm bin Safwan, was the statement of Al-Jabar, that a man is compelled, he is forced upon his actions. And this is why these people were referred to as the Jabariyya and the Jahmiyya. And this is an individual who took his statements from Al-Ja'd bin Dirham, and Al-Ja'd bin Dirham was at the end of the state of Bani Umayyah. Bani Umayyah, the first ruling dynasty, from Muawiyah radiallahu anhu to the end, lasting about 80 or so years, 80 years. So around 124, 120, around that era, this is when this man was around. And so the ruler of the time, one of the rulers of that time, Khalid bin Abdullah al-Qasri, rahimahullah, then he took him and he basically executed him. And he said, this man, he claims that Allah does not speak to Musa alayhi salam, and nor has he taken Ibrahim as a Khalil. And so therefore he executed him for his heresy and his deviations. And likewise he said Al-Qadariyya, and they are the deniers of Al-Qadar, and they are the Mu'tazila. The Mu'tazila are the ones who they actually adopted many statements. We already mentioned that they took position regarding the sinners, that they are in a position between two positions. Likewise, they also took the saying of negation of the attributes. Likewise, they also took the saying of al-qadr, exaggerating al-qadr and claiming that man is a creator of his own actions. And so therefore they resemble the Majus. The Majus, they say that there is a God of good and a God of light, even though they say the God of light is superior. But nevertheless, they attribute evil to a God of evil. And whereas the Qadariyah, they basically make every person a God alongside Allah. Because every person now is independently creating his own actions outside of Allah's will, outside of Allah's power. So this person now has become a creator. So therefore, in this respect, the Qadariyah, they resembled the Majus. And we spoke about them previously as well. And on top of this, Shaykh al-Albani, rahimahullah, in his commentary upon At-Tahawiy's Creed, he adds, likewise, so after a mention of the Mushabbiha and the Jabariyah and the Qadariyah and the Mu'tazila, he says, likewise also the Muqallida, the blind followers, those who basically made taqleed to be a deen. And they said that this is wajib upon everyone who comes after the 4th century of Islam. If you come after the 4th century of Islam, which is the 300s, after that era, then it is wajib upon you to make taqleed of a madhab. And as a result of this statement, they then turned away from the guidance of the book and the sunnah. And everyone who tried to basically move away from this or relieve himself from this stagnation, this is a type of stagnation, where it's like a partisanship to a madhab, and it leads to stagnation eventually, and who tries to leave that and go towards guidance through the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, through his guidance, then they don't like this. And that's why the scholars they mention, for example, in poetry form, that the deen of the Prophet ﷺ, Muhammad ﷺ, is the akhbar, is the narrations, and how excellent a track it is for a youth to traverse the athar. Do not pursue or desire anything other than the hadith and its tools and its sciences. For ra'i, opinion, is simply the night, and the hadith is the day. Right? Comparing between the two. So then At-Tahawi said, وَغَيْرِهِمْ. So he mentions others. These he mentioned, and then there are obviously others as well. And this means everyone who opposes the Kitab and the Sunnah and all of the remaining sects, the misguided sects. So Shaykh al-Fawzan, he says, we are free from all of them. We show enmity for the sake of Allah with respect to them. We hate that which they're upon, and we hate them because they are people of dalal, people of misguidance, people of batil. So it's wajib to boycott them and to refute them for their falsehood and so on. And so anyone, and likewise not only that, but we also say, anyone who comes along and he says that every sect actually comes under the name of Islam, and it is upon us to take the opinion of everyone and give everyone the freedom of opinion and so on and so forth, because all these sects at the end of the day, they still come under the flag of Islam, then this is a futile, false madhab. And it is extremely dangerous upon the ummah. And this type of statement, where a person is free to speak his speech and free to give his opinion, that has to be conditioned with the Kitab and the Sunnah, what the Salaf were upon. And as for the groups which are opposed to that which is in the book and the Sunnah, then they are in the fire, except for one, and that is what the Sahaba are upon, what the Messenger is upon, what the Sahaba are upon. And so we know that every person, he can be subject to mistakes and errors, and tawfiq is only in the hand, is in the hand of Allah Azza wa Jal. And for that reason, a person, he knows he's not guaranteed safety. Rather, he has to hope in Allah and fear in Allah along the lines of what we mentioned in the previous lesson. So this brings us to the end of what Shaykh Salih Al-Fawzan mentions, and we'll finish inshallah ta'ala with some speech from Shaykh Salih Al-Shaykh, and hopefully this will conclude our discussion of this section. So Shaykh Salih Al-Shaykh, he simply first of all gives a summary of what we've covered in this book, in this Aqeedah, written by Abu Aqeedah Tahawiyyah rahimahullah, in the sense that he covered all of the usul of the i'tiqad, usul of belief in Allah, angels, books, messengers, the last day, al-qadar, its good and its bad. Likewise, he spoke about many other issues which come under the 6 pillars of Eemaan, the issues of belief that the Salaf spoke about, regarding the Sahaba, regarding the Khilafah, regarding the 10 who were promised paradise, and likewise issues connected to Eemaan, and also other issues with respect to, for example, the people of knowledge, how we treat the people of knowledge, with respect to the awliya, with respect to miracles and things like that. All of these things he included within his creed. And the issues which he spoke with the truth, with the exception of the issue of Eemaan, the issue of Eemaan in which he erred. And so when he says at the end that this is our deen, this is our belief openly and inwardly, and we free ourselves in front of Allah from everyone who opposes that which we have mentioned and explained. So the Shaykh then explains something very, very important and very, very dangerous. And what this will tell us is the extreme importance to the affairs of Tawheed and Aqeedah. So he says, there's no doubt that the issues of belief, issues of i'tiqad, they are connected to the heart. The issues of creed that we discuss as part of our belief, they are connected to the heart. And the heart is something that is very easy to change. It changes suddenly and quickly. And that's why it is referred to as al-qalb, something that turns and changes. It is very swift in taqallub, meaning turning and changing. And for that reason, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to make dua, Ya muqallib al-qulub, farrigh qulubana ila ta'atik. Or Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik. O turner of the hearts, empty our hearts, meaning make our hearts inclined to your obedience. Empty our hearts except with your obedience, So make our hearts only full of your obedience. Or in another wording, O turner of the hearts, make our hearts firm and established upon your deen. And other such words which have come in the hadith. So the heart is something that quickly changes. And we see that the speech of the heart, the action of the heart, the belief of the heart is something that can very quickly change. Why is this? The real reason is because it is all built upon ilm. And ilm, knowledge, it can benefit and then it disappears. Right? Knowledge, you acquire a bit of knowledge, and that knowledge is forgotten. It leaves, it goes. Or every time you leave something from knowledge, or you neglect something from knowledge, then that will have an effect upon the heart. So, when a person leaves and abandons the affairs of Aqeedah, that will then affect the Aqeedah of the heart. A person neglects the affairs of Aqeedah. This now affects the heart. Either it will affect because there is deficiency in knowledge, and because of that deficiency, therefore, this will now affect the certainty of the heart. The yaqeen of the heart will be affected. And because he has neglected that knowledge, then he will not be holding belief in that which is true. So he is missing those elements now. And likewise, in the absence of that knowledge, maybe a shubha will come to him, some doubt or some misconception. And because of the absence of the relevant knowledge, or because of the weakness in knowledge, he will now be affected by that shubha. And shaitan, the thing which he rejoices most is when a person, he quickly, his heart changes. When his heart changes. Because when his heart changes, then his limbs change after that. And this is in accordance with the hadith, Ala wa inna fil jasad mudghah idha saluha al-jasad. Indeed, there is in the body, when a morsel of flesh, when it is correct and rectified, then all of the body, saluha al-jasad kullu, all of the body will be rectified. And when it is corrupt, wa idha fasadat fasad al-jasad kullu, ala wa hiya al-qalb, and then all of the body will be corrupt. Indeed, it is the heart. So this shows that the corruption of the heart, it is by way of shubuhat and shahawat. Shubuhat and shahawat. And these are the doubts and the desires. Doubts and the desires. So when a shubha, when a doubt or a misconception is presented to the heart, and then it takes root in the heart, then knowledge will decrease. Or the heart will become corrupt. And the greatest things in which there are shubuhat are the affairs of aqeedah. Right? The greatest affairs in which there is shubuhat, in which a person receives shubuhat, is in the affairs of aqeedah. And for that reason, it's for this very reason that the scholars, the leading scholars, the people of knowledge, the people who give advice to the ummah, who give advice to the leaders of the Muslims and to the common folk of the Muslims, they always advise the concern with tawheed and aqeedah. Always. Because it is that thing which is quickest to change in the heart. The heart, these matters. Because why? A heart is something that forgets. Or the heart might only remember things in terms of the mujmalat, generalities. Right? In general, when you learn knowledge, you find that you will be able to recall the generalities of knowledge. And as for the specifics, you tend that you don't really recall them. Many people don't recall the specifics. This is just the nature of knowledge. The specifics can be forgotten. Right? So for example, a person might be able to say, well, yes, I know that al-qadar, it is to believe that Allah knows everything and everything is written down and everything is through Allah's will and through His creation, that what He creates to be and to bring about. So in general, you remember some of the general things. But then when it comes to the specific details now, to do with this topic, a lot of the tafsilat that relate to, for example, how the Jabariyya erred and how the Qadariyya erred and, the specific things, you tend not to recall those things. And so this is the nature of knowledge in the attributes, in the sifat, in some other things like that, to do with the Sahaba and so on and so forth. So this is just the general nature of these matters of Tawheed and Aqeedah. And so because of that, when these things are not remembered, and then on top of this you find that a person has sins as well, because sins now, they enter into the mix as well. There are sins which are affecting a person's heart. He's committing sins. And those sins now are putting spots, blotches upon his heart. And sins, they tend to blind a person from seeing the truth. And then on top of that, you might see that a shubha comes along. A shubha comes along now. And that shubha now comes into his heart as well. So you can see now that all these things now, there's a mixture of all of these things. Right? There's jahl, there's, there's no detailed knowledge because it's forgotten or it's been corrupted and written over by way of sins that a person is committing. It's mixed and confused. And then a shubha comes along and all these things are now, are in the heart. And what happens from here is that a person now is harmed by this. Right? He's harmed bit by bit, bit by bit. So the shubuhat and the shahawat. Shahawat, sins. You follow your desires. Shubuhat. Right? They come together and a person harms himself. And this is why the greatest supplication and the first supplication in the Quran is the supplication for guidance to the straight path. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. This is the very first supplication in the Quran, in Surah Al-Fatiha. And this supplication is asking for guidance, that a person is guided to the path which is Al-Islam, which is the Quran, which is the Sunnah. It is Islam and Eemaan. And the Quran and the Sunnah have many, many details. And we know that Islam and Eemaan, the issues to do with them, Islam, is connected to the heart, is connected to the limbs, connected to action, and Eemaan is connected to the heart, connected to, so this is the issue of Islam and Eemaan, which we've dealt with previously. But the point being here that when we look at the Quran, we see the Quran and the text, they have issues to do with Tawheed, they have issues to do with belief in the unseen. All of these are matters of belief. And when a person asks for guidance to the straight path, then he is sincere to Allah, he humbles himself to Allah, he desires the truth. And when he asks for all of this, then it is from Allah's mercy, Allah's compassion, that he has made this particular dua the very first dua in the Quran. The very first question which is asked in the Quran, that we ask, Ihdina Siratal Mustaqim. This is the first question in the Quran. And likewise in the prayer in the Salah, the first wajib question in the Salah is this question. As for the opening supplications in the prayer, they are not wajib. They are recommended, they're not wajib. Right? But as for that which is wajib, which is Surah Al-Fatiha, the first question that a person asks in the prayer is this ayah, Ihdina Siratal Mustaqim, the first wajib question in the prayer as well. All of this indicates how great and mighty this dua is. And that's because the heart, لأن القلب يتقلب, it is something that changes. Al-Eemaan يتغير, Eemaan changes. And Islam, it changes. And all of this is because, as we said, the weakness of knowledge and the weakness of applying this knowledge, and so on and so forth. And that's why you see, look at the words of Imam Tahawi, rahimahullah, at the very end of his speech. What does he say? He says, نسأل الله تعالى أن يثبتنا على الإيمان ويختم لنا به ويعصمنا من الأهواء المختلفة. What does he say? He makes this dua. He says, we ask Allah the Most High to make us firm upon Eemaan and to seal for us, meaning to seal our lives upon this Eemaan, and to protect us from the variant desires. So we see here this great Imam. This is the way of the people of knowledge, the Rabbani scholars. They ask Allah for thabat, for firmness upon Eemaan. And, he's already explained this Aqeedah. He's explained this creed. He's explained all of these affairs which a person is in need of. And he's asking Allah to seal his life upon it. And this is because At-Tahawi knows, as do the scholars, the great Rabbani scholars, they know that Eemaan can be stripped out of a person's heart. It can be taken out completely, or it can be taken, incompletely, in parts. Or maybe some of the details of Eemaan can be taken out and forgotten, or maybe some of the parts of Eemaan can be taken out and forgotten from his heart. So because they recognize this, they make dua with this great and mighty dua. This dua in which a person asks for a thabat upon Eemaan, and to be free and protected from the various opinions and desires which misguide. So he mentioned here, the Shaykh mentions the various sects which were present in his time, the Qadariyah, the Jahmiyah, the Jabariyah, the Qadariyah, and likewise those like them from the Khawarij, Rafida, and people like them. So any person who has knowledge of all of this, then he will have fear. The one who knows these affairs will have khashya, he will fear for himself, because shaitan is eager to misguide a person, and a person is weak. We are weak, and shaitan is very eager to misguide a person. So every time the situation is like this, then it is wajib upon the servant to ask and to make this dua, and that he basically does two things. There are two things he must do in order to save himself. First of them is al-ilm al-nafi', to pursue beneficial knowledge. To pursue beneficial knowledge of the correct aqeedah, of at-tawheed with its evidences from the kitab and from the sunnah. And that should be apparent in his heart. It should be apparent in his heart. It should be, this knowledge should be something clear and apparent in his heart, meaning that he doesn't have any shubha in his heart in respect to the affairs of knowledge. And, he returns back to this knowledge and he makes sure there's no gaps in this knowledge such that shaitan can come and enter into any kind of little crevice or nook or cranny or something like this. So, importance to al-aqeedah as-sahihah. Affairs of tawheed, affairs of Eemaan, affairs of aqeedah, and so on and so forth. Second, whilst he is bringing this wasila of knowledge, whilst he is acquiring this knowledge, then he also must seek protection by way of Allah and ask Allah that he does not cause his heart to be misguided. O Allah, do not cause our hearts to deviate after you have guided us. So he makes this dua to Allah and he makes istighatha. He seeks protection from Allah that he does not cause his heart to deviate after knowledge and guidance. After having knowledge and guidance. So he must make this dua as well. And these are the two means by which he is eager upon his firmness upon this deen. So after this, the Shaykh then goes on to say that all of this indicates the great danger, and anyone who knows the true estimation of Allah and what he possesses of names and attributes, and he knows the effects of these names and attributes in his creation, and he knows how many hearts have been turned and how many people have been misguided and how many hearts have deviated. When he knows all of these affairs, then it will show him the graveness of this particular issue. So the Shaykh then makes a dua that we ask Allah Azza wa Jal by way of his names and attributes that he makes us firm upon Eemaan, and he seals our lives and likewise those of our parents and our loved ones upon this Eemaan, and protect us from the various opinions and the desires and the lowly madhahib, lowly doctrines. And he says that when we look at the Imam of the Hunafa, the Imam of those who are upright upon Tawheed alayhi salam, we see that he made dua with this supplication. He's speaking about Ibrahim alayhi salam, who said, وَجْنُبْنِي وَبَنِيَّ أَن نَعْبُدَ الْأَصْنَامِ رَبِّ إِنَّهُنَّ أَضْلَلْنَ كَثِيرًا مِنَ النَّاسِ. And protect me and my offspring from that we should worship idols. For indeed, O Lord, they have misguided many amongst mankind. This is Ibrahim alayhi salam, the Imam of the Hunafa, the Imam of those who are upright upon Tawheed, who is not of the Mushrikeen, he's of the Muslimeen and the Hunafa. And in this ayah, we see that Ibrahim alayhi salam mentions here how many of the idols and the false deities, they have misguided many amongst the people. Why? Because the hearts are affected by them, or that these idols, these things which are worshipped, have awliya, they have people, allies, they have people, followers who worship them, who spread these shubuhat, who spread these doubts, and they then affect the hearts. So Ibrahim al-Islam, he asked his Lord to protect him and his offspring from that they should be put to trial in this manner and be led to worshipping the idols. And this shows the great fear of Ibrahim al-Khalil alayhi salam from this type of zayr, this deviation which creeps into the heart. And yet Ibrahim alayhi salam is who he is. He is, al-Khalil, he is the friend of Allah Azza wa Jal. He's the one who is chosen by Allah Azza wa Jal. And likewise, we see that Ibrahim at-Taymi from the Tabi'een, rahimahullah, when he came across this ayah and he explained this ayah, as is narrated by At-Tabari, in his tafsir, he said, وَمَنْ يَأْمَنْ الْبَلَاء بَعْدَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ. Who is safe from trial after Ibrahim? Who is secure from trial after Ibrahim? This is what he said. And this shows that a person who is sincere, who would want to give himself advice to himself firstly, and then to the ummah, and then to the leaders of the Muslims, and to the general folk, in truth, then he will give them the advice to be concerned with the tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal. The tawheed, which is the right of Allah upon His servants, and to purify the hearts from all false beliefs, because the hearts are rectified by this tawheed, and by having an aqeedah which is secure and free from any, from anything which is corrupt. And any person who is like this, his heart is like this, of sound belief, then even if his action is very, very small, then his reward will be mighty with Allah, and it will have barakah, right? This purity of tawheed and purity of belief is a great and mighty affair, and its reward is tremendous. And this is because in small amount of in deeds which are good and which are built upon this purity, Allah will bless it, He will increase it, and He will multiply it. When the heart is salim, when the heart is safe and secure from all these, from the doctrine of the Jahmiyyah, the doctrine of the Jabariyah, the doctrines of the Mu'tazila, the doctrines of the Ash'aris, the doctrines, and when the heart is salim like this, and secure and safe from all these blemishes, and these corruptions, and these ara, these opinions, and these ahwa, these desires, then even if the deed is small, little, then Allah Azza wa Jal will bless it, will increase it, will multiply it many, many, many fold. And this is because of the purity in creed, purity in tawheed. But as for when the action is tremendous, the action is great, and action is plentiful, alongside an aqeedah which is fasida, corrupt aqeedah, then this does not consider anything. فَإِنَّ هَذَا لَيْسَ بِشَيْءٍ. This amounts to nothing, amounts to very little. So this is the reality of the affair. And so with that final note, with that tremendous reminder to give importance to the issue of tawheed, we'll conclude our discussion there.